Hey everyone, I'm Christina Mallon, and I lead inclusive design at Microsoft, and I'll be your moderator today for our panel, which is Build Better. Learn how to build compliant and usable products that are truly accessible experiences. We know an application or website might be designed and coded to meet accessibility compliance standards, but it still may not be usable by people with disabilities because the standards require only the bare minimum. So for this session, we're going to provide guidance on what design practices product makers can use to create not only compliant products, but usable products for the disability community. I'm joined by Alwal, and Eliel, and Maya. So friends, why don't you introduce yourselves? We'll go in alphabetical order. Alwal, over to you.
Hey everyone, I'm Alvar. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Fable. I've been in the accessibility space for over the last 10 years. And with Fable, we help enterprises make their digital products accessible to everyone by having an inclusive product development process. Thank you, Microsoft, for having me here.
Thanks for joining us. Anne, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Hello, everybody. I'm Anne. I work in the Central Accessibility team at Microsoft, partnering with engineering divisions to ensure that our products and services are accessible for persons with disability. It's great to be here. Thanks, Christina.
Oh, so glad to be here with you, Anne. And we'll hand it over to Eliel.
Hi, I'm Eliel Johnson. I lead the design team at CVS Health. And we have a talented team that works hard on behalf of all of our customers. And I'm a passionate proponent of inclusive design and accessibility. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Glad to have you here. And last but not least, Maya.
Hello, I'm Maya Alvarado. I'm a senior researcher at Booking.com. I specialize in accessibility and inclusive design. And my role involves scaling accessibility research across all of our product areas so that we can build inclusive digital and physical experiences.
Thanks for joining. I know you're across the pond, so I know it's late. So we really, really appreciate, and hopefully you can get a nice nap after this. So I feel really lucky to have you here for the next 45 minutes to really chat about usability, given you all have unique roles in pushing usability at your organizations. So I want to open up the first question to everyone. Could you provide examples of good usability for disabled users? And again, we'll start in alphabetical order. So Alwar, let's start with you.
Yeah. Good usability. When I think about good usability, I automatically think about inclusive design. So creating products that adapt to diverse abilities, ages, languages, and any form of human difference. And a great example of that is the Nike Fly Ease. This is hands-free running shoes that were designed specifically for people with disabilities. And when Nike released this, the demand skyrocketed because everyone wanted a sleek, easy to use shoe that they can wear. And I think that's the beauty of good usability is when it has broader impact.
I love that. My partner, my nonprofit worked on that, and she was the only way I was able to get a shoe because it was all sold out. So I love that example. And why don't I hand it over to you to talk about kind of a good example of usability for people with disabilities?
Sure. I have some favorites. So recently, Microsoft just released the Surface Pro Flex keyboard, and it is pretty innovative in a way that it has haptic as well as large font, bold font, and also backlighting. And so all of these features can help with accessibility. You can also include the Surface keyboard cover that is bold as well. If you have regular keyboard for your Surface that is not the Pro Flex. So even the hardware we really like to ensure that everybody can use it. And other example that I like is seeing AI, of course, that will help me see things around me using AI, Azure Cognitive Services. And we also partner with external partner like Be My Eyes. Anybody who wants to explore what AI on Windows look like should go download the Be My Eyes app on Windows. These are some of the favorites I have that is, in a recent past. So there's a whole many more examples that we can talk through, but I'll just stop there for now.
Oh, I mean, those are really great examples, and I recommend that everyone checks that out. And we'll hand it over to Eliel. Can you provide some of your favorite usability examples for the disability community?
Yeah, I mean, I think usability, should be focused on including everyone first and foremost, and thinking about making things usable for everyone upstream. And our population is really large. 85% of people live within 10 minutes of a CVS pharmacy, and we support over 100 million people. So we have to think about everybody. And an example that, I think I'm proud of that the company for pushing forward was Spoken RX, which was the first in-app prescription reader developed by a national pharmacy that allows prescription labels to be read aloud in English or Spanish. It uses RFID technology, and it's a way to make it a physical object more accessible, in this goal of bringing healthcare to more people. And it was recognized as a Fast Company Innovation by Design award, which is great to see. But it also just, it really shows our commitment to, including everyone.
I love that. I have my nanny only speaks Spanish, and she puts all my pills together. And she's been using the app, and that's helped her because she can't read English. So,
Wow.
I think thinking about inclusive design even outside of accessibility and providing that capability in different languages is huge. So thanks for doing that. Mayo, what about you?
All really, really cool examples. I love them. Mine is the Flex Cup, which was previously called Keela, which is a sustainable menstrual cup that has an external pull tab, so you can hook your finger for a more easy removal. This was designed by Jane Adami, who has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, with the goal of making it easier for people with disabilities and/or dexterity challenges to use menstrual products. And it's a really great example of, again, inclusive design. By taking what's, to be fair, a fairly awkward product to use and making it more accessible is actually making it better for everyone.
I also heard really interesting that younger teen girls also enjoyed it because it was easier to put in than a tampon, and then just more user friendly, which was so interesting. I think that's a great example. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your examples. Wanted to really highlight that and kick off the call with some really solid examples. So as we move on to our next question, I would love to understand how does compliance and usability intersect, and what's needed to build truly inclusive products? Because I always hear compliance and usability interchangeably, and would love for Anne and Maya to kick it off, really explaining how they intersect and what's needed to build inclusive products. And Anne, I'll start with you.
Sure. The very foundation of accessibility is to be compliant. And you have to build from something. You have to start with accessibility compliant. Then you can have the technical underpinning to go and reach higher to achieve usability. But one of the beautiful thing about working in accessibility is that usability and compliance will not only help improve the products, but it also create a level of empathy when none of this is possible without persons with disability work alongside engineers, developers, designers to bring about a comprehensive picture of what accessibility look like. I often said to my colleagues as well as the disability community that accessibility is like a really fantastic way for people to come together to help each other create something that's really impactful and meaningful to the lives of everybody. And when you have developers and users co-create, co-design together, you will reach not only compliance, but achieve usability in a meaningful way, in an impactful way. So it not only make product better, but it's good for everybody.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for that, Anne. Maya, would love to get your take on that.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. I think that's an amazing perspective. And yeah, I think compliance is the hook that usually gets organizations to take accessibility seriously. So like you're saying, it's very much the foundation. It's a great way to set benchmarks and to track progress over time. But compliance only goes so far, and it tends to focus on individual elements rather than a full experience. And of course, as we know, accessibility isn't just a checklist. It's a really core part of UX. You can't have good usability without accessibility. And I think a good kind of rule of thumb is, can a product really be usable if it's only usable for some people? And I think usability is really all about making products and services easy for everyone to use. And taking this usability focused approach encourages us to look at the entire journey, not just isolated features, to ensure that accessibility is baked into the whole experience. So thinking of usability and accessibility as like two sides of the same coin, that's why it's so important to include everyone in the product development process from the very beginning. You wouldn't wait until the end of a product lifecycle to test the overall usability. So why would we exclude accessibility from that stage? It needs to be part of the process from the very start. So I think, yeah, in terms of like where you can begin with that, it's like first make sure that you're testing full end-to-end experiences with people with accessibility needs, and really shifting that mindset that it's not just fixing a few bugs, but actually it's an ongoing journey to improve the process.
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially when you talk about kind of it's important for everyone to consider this. And I think a lot of the times people just look at accessibility checklists and then think they're done. But it's super important throughout the product, development cycle to look at that and test throughout. And I think a lot of teams don't do that. And that's why it was so important to have you all on the call today, because you are living and breathing accessibility at these big organizations or helping big organizations do this. And I think kind of what you're saying needs to be done at many more organizations. I see sometimes that organizations have a hard time balancing usability and compliance as an approach to meet accessibility, for all. I'd love to understand really like, how do you balance the priorities and the resource constraints for really doing this without hurting compliance? Because I always feel like when I'm talking to developers or researchers and they're saying, okay, well, we have to focus on meeting compliance goals. We can't think about usability, but would love to understand, especially at CVS, how are you balancing compliance and usability across all of your products at such a large company?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's a real challenge for everyone. And for us, first of all, our company mission is grounded in empathy. We're in the healthcare business. We want to help people. And we have such a large customer base. We want to make sure we're really addressing everyone and meeting them where they need to be. And as one, scale empathy across your organization. So build in an understanding of that, whether it's, conducting primary research like we do with people with different abilities, sharing those videos, building the understanding of the why into the team, whether it's the product team, the engineering team, or the design team, so they understand why it's important. And then tactically trying to shift left, move accessibility as a as a construction requirement or just part of the good craft of building software into the process upstream. So rather than remediating defects downstream, make it part of well-crafted software upstream. So how might you do that? We have a really robust design system, and making sure that those reusable components in the way we build software and code software have accessibility built in from the start, then it amplifies that impact downstream. So you're concentrating effort into things that are then built multiple times or launched multiple times. And so downstream, you have fewer defects potentially. So that's one strategy, is really dedicating the energy into the actual fabric of the products you're going to be building early on in the components you're building from. There's also this, there's no substitute. We talked about earlier having people with actual differing abilities on your team. So in our inclusive and accessible team, we have people with differing abilities who really can speak to the needs and can look at the products and coach and train our own people, which I think is really important. So those are all sort of ways to approach bringing the quality of the software and the functionality upstream, and just trying to make sure that for every dollar you invest, it has a maximum impact for our end users.
Would you be able to, because I think, we have over 20,000 people that attend Ability Summit, and not everyone's a designer. Could you kind of explain a design system and how thinking about and getting usability into that in the beginning can help you scale?
Absolutely. So a design system really is the language or components that the atoms that a piece of software is built from. So just specifically things as granular as color and typography, and buttons and drop downs, up to more compound components. But if you're using, say, a specific button or drop down, if it's been built well and built to be accessible, then the probability of it being accessible and experienced downstream when a developer uses it or a designer uses it, you have your color contrast and your functionality and all your other construction requirements baked into it. So the design system really is sort of a library of components that are used to build the software that you're actually shipping. So it brings some of those well-crafted properties along with it as a component. One thing we did was, we had a focus on not just helping ourselves and helping our customers, but helping everyone. There's an open source accessibility kind of approach that we have. And we did share our design annotation toolkits and mobile accessibility applications widely. They're open source. And we got a lot of positive feedback, and they've been adopted by a lot of major organizations. So we're trying to give back, actually, and share, because I think everyone's aligned in wanting to make our software and experiences everywhere better for people of all abilities.
Yeah, that's amazing. There are so little resources out there when it comes to accessibility and how to do that at scale. So I was really excited when I saw that launched on LinkedIn, given that we could even benefit from those annotation guides. So thank you for that.
I want to open Christina, if I might add something, sure. I'm going to put a challenge to the industry here. Since there are 20,000 people or whatever, however many people are watching this, we need more tooling. We need more advanced tooling that can help us combat inaccessible development, inaccessible design. We need tooling that can emulate the AT interactions and understand the user's need. And I'm really hopeful, we're not there yet, but I'm hopeful that AI will bring about the tooling that we need to foster the development where usability is more readily achievable.
Yeah, we definitely need some co-pilots, pun intended, for accessible tooling. I think, the way to get that done at scale is really through human AI partnership. And I think that really leads a nice segue into all our, you work with so many of the biggest brands. How are you seeing people really balance and usability and compliance with limited resources?
Yeah, I think we have the privilege of supporting hundreds of enterprises, and we see various methods in which organizations integrate usability as part of their accessibility process. And what we're seeing is that usability is actually giving companies confidence in their accessibility efforts. And some of the things that we've seen work really well for organizations is one, just having a really strong customer voice. And what I mean by that is a continuous feedback loop where you are collecting feedback, you're reviewing feedback, and you're acting on that feedback. And I mean feedback from the disability community, because that really tells you exactly where your products are. It also gives externally confidence to consumers that you are constantly listening and you're improving and iterating, because there is no done state. You are always going to keep improving your products. The second one that I think has worked really well, and we have some of our customers who've done this, which is they just set a baseline for what are the standards that they want all of their product teams to do. So you obviously have your compliance standard, which is very much rooted in WCAG, but they're also including usability as part of those baseline standards. So they would ask each of their product teams, saying that each of your critical flows need to have a completion rate of 100% for anyone who's using an AT. So that puts the focus on the user now and not just talking about it from a WCAG standard. The other one that we've seen is what we've built, which is our Fable Accessible Usability Scale. And this is a quantifiable score to know how usable your product is for an assistive technology user. And what we've seen customers do is that they actually have product teams set a baseline AUS score. So it can be, depending on where you're at, it can be as low as 50 or it can be as high as 75. But this gives each product team a more understandable lens to how to integrate accessibility. And also when they reach that score, they're confident that their products are working for everyone.
Yeah, that's been really helpful in our organization, because if you can't measure it, you can't really see how you're going to really shift left. And that's been really important for us, especially that it's linked to SUS, system usability scale. So our teams not working on accessibility are familiar with that usability scale. And then I'd love to understand, since we're chatting right now, about how do you convince people to make this a business priority? And I think this is really important for you and everyone else. Please chime in. Is that you are, your company's in hot demand. We are all customers of your company, but I know you're going to have to make the business pitch at times. So how are you seeing your team make the business pitch for usability, and how are you seeing that organizations are, making the pitch to themselves to focus on usability?
Yeah, and I think that's true. I think a lot of organizations definitely understand the value of accessibility and have compliance integrated. But when you take the lens of usability, for some organizations, this is the first time that they're doing it. So there is a lot of, education involved in that process. For us, there are two main drivers that are getting organizations excited to use usability as a business lever. And the first one I would say is that our demographics are changing and evolving. We know that 1 in 6 individuals live with a disability. We know that as you age, you experience age-related disability. In Canada, 1 in 2 seniors experience disability. In the US, we're expecting by 2035 to have more individuals above the age of 65 than individuals under the age of 18. So when you just look at our demographics, there are going to be a lot more people who rely on accessibility accommodations. So that's definitely one of the drivers for why businesses are starting to pay attention to usability as a driver. The second one is that usability drives business performance. There was a study done by McKinsey. It was a 5-year study where they evaluated the impact of design teams within organizations, and they looked at the top, the 300 public companies. And what came out of it was that 32% higher revenue growth for companies with a strong design practice, and 56% higher total returns to shareholders. And when we mean design practice, it means if you're focusing on design, you are focusing on user experience and you're focusing on making sure your products are usable. what we've noticed at Fable is usability also influences loyalty. We have community of testers all across the US and Canada who live with a disability. We're soon going to be in the EU as well. And we run surveys often with our community just to get their insights and perspectives on what their preferences are. And we ran one that was specific for the financial services, but I think it does apply to a broader group as well. And we found that 67% of respondents said that they would switch a financial provider if there was a better, a more usable experience. So when we think about, the demographics are changing, companies have to retain their customers, they have to grow their user base. I think usability is actually a cheat code to achieve that.
I love that. Usability as a cheat code. I'd love everyone else to chime in on that because I think this is super important. A lot of people are focused on compliance and not usability. So what have we seen to get people to make this a business priority within your organization when there's just already limited resources?
Sure, I'll add some quick thing to consider here. I think that there's no better way to help build usability when you actually work alongside persons with disability. In Microsoft, I'm privileged to work alongside many engineers, and some of them are new engineers who really do not know too much about accessibility yet. But the fact that you have people with disability like myself working alongside them, you create an understanding, an allyship, a partnership, a right level of empathy. And technically, everybody wants to do the right thing. And when you look across your desk at your colleague who may have different needs than you do, then it become a challenge. It become a culture building exercise for everyone to ensure that technologies are built in an inclusive manner. And when you do that, you achieve usability.
Love that. It is really, if you can't see it, it's hard to understand it. So it's so important to have people with diverse abilities and disabilities in your organization. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
I think that really resonates, and it really resonates in how I feel about the work that we do within our team at Booking.com. So we have a really strong employee resource group at Booking representing accessibility, who are advisors, collaborators, champions of the accessibility work and strategies across Booking.com. And it's collaborations with them that steer our directions and inform me on the best practices to take. So I completely agree, Anne. It's really essential to have a diverse workforce. A few things that I think have kind of helped us to kind of gain buy-in internally. We do a weekly accessibility open hours where peers can share feedback with one another. And it's a chance to come together and build a really trusting, safe space to try different stuff out and not always have the answers yourself. So I'm always learning from my colleagues, and I'm always learning more about accessibility from every weekly session. And then the other thing we do is we celebrate and encourage the usability focused work that our teams are doing through what we call Fable Cinema, where we have a regular event, we get together, eat popcorn and watch clips from recent Fable research studies. And then we have a discussion between videos to understand how we can improve that product area. So I think that's a nice way of taking the research and making it actionable.
I want to come to Fable Cinema.
I feel like, we should do more Fable Cinemas.
I love this.
I would add on to that, and similarly, bringing the stories of real users and customers, to the product owners to build empathy, whether it's through video clips or other mechanisms, is a really key part of making sure you're building empathy in your organization. And I think we're unique in that, not unique amongst all companies, but we're in healthcare, and there's just a deep mission that drives, trying to help people. And I think that it's not a stretch to say that helping people helps everyone, and that we've all had situations where, maybe even a conditional disability, an assistive technology helps, then, or we have friends and family members who need assistive technologies. And so I think it's not hard to build empathy in a company, but it does take effort, and it doesn't happen by accident. And having a good, hardworking, well-intentioned team that helps educate and train. We have a fantastic team here at CVS Health who've been working on this mission for years and have built really high trust relationships in the organization. And I know that the empathy, goes all the way to the top, and that's part of our mission.
That's amazing. Got to get, leadership, because that really pushes people. I mean, they know it's the right thing, but when leadership cares, they tend to get it done. Talking about kind of lived experiences, and I'd love, and this is spontaneous question, so, feel free to think on this one, but I'd love to understand an experience that you've had as a blind screen reader user where a product was compliant, but it was really hard to use, just so that people can really understand how that can really set somebody back.
Sure, absolutely. I'm not going to name any name or name any product, but let's just talk about some characteristic of this. So let's say you have, you want to accomplish a task, and there's a button that takes you 8 shift tab to get there, right? So yeah, you can get to it, and you can, especially for keyboard users, not just screen reader users, 8 shift tab is a lot. But it is accessible, and it is compliant, and the button actually labeled correctly, but it's not efficient. So usability will bring about efficiency, and efficiency is what people need to stay productive in today's world. So that's just one example. We have so many UIs scattered throughout the web page, products, that it are hard to discover. And even though you can eventually get to it, you want to be able to ensure that the product is more, the various features within the product is more easily discoverable. And that also translate into usability when you can do that. Does it make sense?
No, that totally makes sense. I'm always so frustrated when I'm using voice technology and there's a delay. And yes, it works, but this takes me, additional time.
Sure.
And that's important that you do it in the same amount of time that someone else can do it as.
Another quick example is a dialogue that doesn't have auto. They don't use a standard dialogue control. So what you have is when you come upon this dialogue, the screen reader is not announced anything. So you have to go and find out what is this dialogue all about. Yeah, you can read it. Yes, it's compliant, but again, it's less efficient.
Oh, that totally makes sense. Thanks so much for sharing your story, Anne. I'd love to, last question, want to open it up to everyone. But if there's one thing that you want, or concept, the viewer to understand about usability, could you let us know? So I will start again in ABC order, just to be fair. So Arwal, sorry for making you go first every time, but unfortunately, you're the first one. One takeaway that you really hope that someone got from this conversation?
Yeah, I think usability and accessibility compliance is complementary, not competing. And one of the things we're excited about as we focus on usability, there's quite a lot of there's a population that we haven't considered yet when we're making these efforts, which is cognitive accessibility. Even when it comes to compliance, it's an area that is still developing. And Maya and I are actually part of a cognitive accessibility working group. And the reason this space is getting me so excited is because, we, even in this conversation today, we've talked about how if you want to make it usable, you got to include people with disabilities. And I think the cognitive accessibility space is going to amplify that. We're going to see so much more wonderful usability insights we're going to get from this community that I think organizations need to start paying attention to. So we're going to make sure that's going to be available in our accessible usability scale, which is already available to the general public.
Thank you. So I am very excited for this. As someone with dual line paralysis, with ADHD, cognition has been ignored, and we need to make sure that we're focusing on cognition, especially because a lot of our products are now using AI, which handles a lot of the cognitive load for individuals. So we need to make sure the programs that are using AI are cognitively inclusive.
Exactly. Yeah.
What about you, Anne? What's one thing you want your viewers and fans to remember from this conversation?
Well, I'll leave you with this. Any company who strive to achieve good usability will already be preparing themselves for the latest, greatest accessibility standard that will come on to the market, such as the European Accessibility Standard, EAA, that will be that everybody need to be compliant by in June of 2025. If you want to know more about that, we have a session at Disability Summit here to talk specifically about how to prepare for EAA and to ensure that the products and services that will be developed will be compliant with EAA. So if you want to learn more about that, you can, I'm sure, look up the recording. Another thing too is really important with the new era of AI. We are accessing different types of content and at a different rate in a different new paradigm that we've ever been doing before so far. And if you only concentrate on compliant and overlook usability, then there's no guarantee whether the AI-driven technology that is being developed by just about everyone will be accessible or user-friendly to persons with disability. And so usability is the essential component of how AI can be usable by everyone. Compliant is simply a building block, a foundation for us to get there. But without usability, I'm not sure whether AI will indeed be accessible. It's a very timely topic that I would urge everybody to participate in, from the technology developers to the users. We cannot develop accessible, usable AI without the disability community.
I can agree more, Anne. Thank you for that. Elliot, what is one thing that you would really like individuals to walk away with here?
Yeah, I think that not to think of usability or accessibility as an afterthought or a remediation, but to think of it as integrated with well-crafted software. And if you build things well from the start, they'll work for everyone. And it is really a function of well-crafted software. Anne spoke a little bit about, you can get through something, but it requires like 8 tabs through an experience. Like that probably also reflects some inelegance in the way it's coded potentially too, right? So if you think about building something elegantly, it'll work through almost any display technology, whether it's visual or otherwise. And so thinking about the craft of building software as including accessibility, and I think a lot of that is where some of the challenges, we talked about earlier about how do you invest in the right places. It's really investing in the craft to make sure everything you build starts with those principles.
Definitely. So glad to have you at the design helm at CVS, because I think it is critical to build those principles in. And Maya, what about you?
Yeah, I think maybe like the top line would be that exclusion will happen. unless we're learning from the experts. So we need to make our research inclusive. So, it can be a bit of a confidence building exercise to do your first accessibility research project. But I'd really encourage you just to recruit some people with disabilities into your research and learn from them, go through your product with them, and invest that time from the start. Fable's been a really fantastic partner for us to really scale that at Booking. And Alva mentioned the work that we're doing in the cognitive working group. And this has been really, really important, especially because the WCAG guidelines don't fully cover cognitive accessibility yet, but that's improving through new versions. So I think, designing for cognitive diversity, designing for broad accessibility leads to better content, better usability, and just better products for everyone. It's worth starting tomorrow.
Love that. So all of you better start this tomorrow, you 20,000 listeners. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time here, so we're going to have to wrap. But I want to give a huge shout out to our panelists for taking the time to share their great knowledge with us. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see all of the great usable products that come out of this conversation.